Okay. So, Bezat Hashem Yitbarach, today we're going to talk about a little bit of the halachot of kashrut. We spoke about the different categories of kashrut, and now Bezat Hashem, we'll talk about the first things that come up to kashrut are the utensils that need to be dipped in the mikveh. Okay. So we spoke about briefly, I believe, last class, that when a person buys a new utensil that was made by a non-Jew, or that was finished at least by a non-Jew, needs to be taken to a mikveh. Now, this is not true for all utensils. Okay, there there are some utensils that do not need to go to the mikveh. In regards to electric appliances, okay, like take for example a water urn or a kettle or things like this that come in direct contact with the food, that we're directly cooking with the food. So there are different opinions when it gets to that. So just as a general thing, in general knowledge, when we all know that if you put it in water, so it can ruin it. In general, again, putting it into the mikveh one time, dipping it at one time, and then taking it out, letting it rest for about 24 hours, 48 hours before using it, usually there shouldn't be any problem with something like that. However, some people, they're still skeptical about that. They don't really enjoy that idea too much. So, like we spoke about last class, there's another solution where they can give the utensil to a non-Jew, right? They give the utensil to a non-Jew and then they borrow it from them afterwards. So that makes it that the utensil belongs to the non-Jew. It is not obligated to go to the mikveh if it belongs to the non-Jew, and that's how you can do it in one situation. Or another option, a third option would be if a person knows how to dismantle this utensil, right? So you take it to someone that knows a little bit of electricity or knows a little bit of these utensils, and you bring it to them. They take it apart. They take out a essential component to make it work, right? So they disconnect some wires to make it that as of this moment the utensil doesn't work, and then when they reconnect these wires, it's considered as if the Jew finished the job. That's another way to get out of having to bring something electric, something electronic to the mikveh. Okay, now the utensils that need to be brought to the mikveh, okay, is something called kelim shehem tzochet haseuda, utensils that are used for food. So, for example, if we have a vase, right, for flowers or something like that, we don't really use that for anything else other than putting on flowers. That doesn't necessarily need the mikveh, right? Only something that actually comes in contact with the food. This is necessary for the mikveh. Now, scissors, okay, depending on how we use them for the kitchen. Okay, there are some scissors that are used as knives, right? Those, if you have those type of scissors, they would need to be taken to the mikveh the same way that a knife needs to be taken to the mikveh. But otherwise, they don't need to go to the mikveh. Another example would be a nutcracker. Right? A nutcracker is not something that is actually used for the food. It's something that is used on the side of the food, meaning just to open the food, and it doesn't actually come in contact with the food. So that would not need the mikveh, as opposed to, for example, a I don't know how it's called. Basically, in Hebrew it's called kotesh shum. Okay, it's the like garlic presser, where you put the garlic inside and you squeeze it together, and then like the garlic comes out as a kind of paste. Yes.
Well, I want to ask you, so sometimes you buy a beautiful wine or tequila, whatever, and they have a kosher for sure, and you have this beautiful bottle. If I then want to use it for regular, for putting water up to my house, I have to make filler, right? But the thing is, like, before was used not tequila. So how I never understood that concept.
Very good. So this we talked about briefly last class as well, and we said about utensils that are meant for one-time use, right? So for example, aluminum trays. Aluminum trays we don't have to take to the mikveh because they're meant to be used for one time and then thrown out. The same thing applies to wine bottles, right? Normally speaking, when we buy a wine bottle, what we do is we use the wine bottle and then we throw it out. Now, I know there are some wine bottles that uh, you know, people like to keep them for decoration or something like that because it's very nice, it looks very nice. If you're going to be using it multiple times and it's common for it to be used multiple times, meaning it's not only you that's deciding to do something like that, then yes, afterwards you would need to take it again to the mikveh, but otherwise otherwise you don't need to take it to the mikveh. Meaning if it's just you yourself that you decide, okay, you have an empty wine bottle and you want to use it for something else, then you don't need to take it to the mikveh because you're kind of doing something different than what its intended purpose was, because its intended purpose was for one-time use and then to be thrown out. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
At one point when you reminded us of last week's class, you said if it is an utensil that has been made by a non-Jew or has been finished by a non-Jew, which means that, for instance, there are some places here like Color Me Mine, Potter Me, where you buy like a raw potter plate, for instance, you paint it, and then they bake it, and you get it. Those have to be toveled or not?
Yes, because again, at the end of the day, the person that's finishing it is the non-Jew. When you paint it, when you color it, when you do whatever you want, so you didn't really make the utensil at that point. The utensil was only completed by the non-Jew.
Finished by a Jew or not by a Jew, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it was finished by a Jew, then it doesn't need it. So if you were the one, let's say, to put it into the oven,
so because
right?
For instance, in Surfside, there is a place called Pottery, and the woman, the owner, is a Jew, and she puts it in the oven.
But she puts or someone?
No,
else?
she
No,
puts.
she.
She does.
Yeah. So if she does it, then there's no, you don't need to take it to the mikveh after.
So if I took it to the mikvah, or if let's say, for instance, like I took it to the mikvah and I did the bracha on it, was it the bracha levatala? Or there's a doubt?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. But let's say that you took other things as well, so then it's not a problem.
Okay, now I know. Baruch Hashem, thank you.
Ezrat Hashem. Okay.
No, not you. We all know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
I'm still thinking, if I use a bottle of the tequila, whatever, for one time, there's no need for tequila. But if I'm for sure using for water, for something that for food, not for food flowers. If I would use it more than one time, I have to do tequila.
So again, it's dependent on what the purpose of the bottle is. It depends on what the purpose of the utensil is, not what your intention is. Which means, if I buy plates, I buy whatever, I buy something that technically needs the mikveh, right? And I say, you know what, I don't want to take it to the mikveh, so I'm going to use it one time and then I'm going to throw it out. That doesn't work. You still have to take it to the mikveh because this utensil is meant to be used multiple times. So at that moment, from the first use, it has to go to the mikveh. However, if I have a utensil, whatever it is, that is meant to be only used once, the intent of the people that made it was for it to be used once. In that case, even if I use it multiple times, I do not need to take it to the mikveh. Okay, so generally speaking, when you have a wine bottle or a tequila bottle, whatever it is, it's meant to be used only once, right? Most people, when they're finished with the bottle, or they're finished with whatever it is, they throw it out. And if you decide afterwards that you're going to use it for longer, so that's that's fine. I mean, you don't need to take it to the mikveh afterwards because that's technically going against the intended purpose.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would this example be appropriate for a plastic container? If I have a
So,
meaning
plastic doesn't need the mikveh.
even if you use it one time in your
If you use it thousands of times, it still doesn't need the mikveh.
Say the materials that needs tevila. This is what I'm.
Sorry?
The materials that needs to do tevila.
Yeah, we're gonna go through that, Be'ezat Hashem. Okay. Now, there are certain things that don't. So sorry. So getting back to what we were saying about like the nutcracker and stuff like that. So again, most people say they don't need the mikveh. There are some that say you should take them. Again, if you add them on to other things, or either that, or you don't, or you take them and you don't make a bracha, that's that's the ideal. Now, there are things that don't need the mikveh at all. For example, wooden utensils, wooden like plates, or you have a wooden bowl or something like this. The utensils made out of wood do not need to go to the do not need to go to the mikveh. Something that is made completely out of pottery, okay, it's completely pottery. It does not need the mikveh. Now, it's important to know that what we have nowadays is a little bit different because the pottery that we have is also glazed. Okay, it has a glaze of like glass on top or on the bottom. Okay, this needs a mikveh. So if it's pure pottery without without like a how do you call it, a glass glaze on top. If there is a glass glaze on top, then it needs to go to the mikveh, even with a bracha. This is again on condition that it's coated from the inside and outside with the glass. If it's only on the inside, for example, you have a cup that only on the inside it's a pottery cup and only the inside is glazed, then you do take it to the mikveh without a bracha. Okay. In general, the things that need to be taken to the mikveh, the utensils that need to be taken to the mikveh that you make a bracha on as well, okay, are metal, okay, things made out of metal, and things made out of glass, okay. Those are the main categories of what needs to be taken to the mikveh. Now, like we said, these other things, they don't, like the wood ones. Another thing, another utensil that started becoming a little bit common is also stone, right? Sometimes you see stoneware. Stoneware doesn't either need to be taken to the mikveh. If it's something rubber or / silicon, they don't need to be taken to the mikveh. If it's plastic, like we said, plastic also doesn't need to go. Plastic also doesn't need to go to the mikveh. You can start using it. You can start using it right away. Yeah, so there are many things. Yes.
I know some people dip in the mikveh the aluminum plate that we put to the oven.
aluminum.
The aluminum
Tins or pans.
tins or pan, voilà, c'est ça.
The aluminum. Sorry, what?
It's a one-time
Trays, aluminum trays.
Non, aluminium, like les
Yeah.
jetables.
We, the one-time use aluminum trays that you can cook.
One-time use.
No, we said we don't need those. Those don't need to meet. Those don't need mikveh at all because they're again one-time use. We said if when it was made with the intention to use one time, then it doesn't need the mikveh at all. Okay, but if it's a multiple use one, for example, you have trays that are meant to be used many times, right? It's a lot thicker. It's something that's meant to be used. That would need the mikveh.
What about electrical appliances, like a toaster that has a metal insert inside?
So very good. We spoke about that in the beginning of this this class, was that in general, electrical appliances would technically need the mikveh. Okay. However, there are ways around it. There are ways around not having to bring them to the mikveh. Okay. And truthfully, there are some poskim that even say once it's electrical and it's something that's more or less fixed, you don't need to take it to the mikveh at all. Okay, so I remember this question came up when over here we don't really have it so much, but it's like in Israel they call it a minibar, which is basically like it's a small water cooler and heater, okay, that connects kind of directly to the sink. It has the different spouts that you like push down. Okay, you want cold water, you push down this. It's like a water cooler, but it's more meant to be stable on the sink, stable on the counter, directly connected to the sink. So I remember we were discussing, like, does something like that need mikveh? Because normally speaking, when you have a boiler, a hot water boiler, right, kettle, the kumkum for Shabbat, normally speaking, most people want to take that to the mikveh, and they said that since this is something that is fixed, it doesn't move. It kind of becomes part of the counter, you can say. And since it's not meant to be moved or anything like that, so then it's no longer really a utensil. Okay. Again, that's for that thing in particular. Now, there are other things where there are other poskim, as I was saying, there are other poskim that say in general, electrical appliances you don't really need to take to the mikveh. So again, each one technically should ask their own rabbi of their community what the rabbi holds, what he says, what he says you should do. And that doesn't mean that you can say, oh, I heard in a class that you don't have to take it. Again, my opinion is ask your rabbi. What your rabbi says is what you should do concerning the electrical appliances. Yeah, either that, or like we said, what you can do is you can gift it to a non-Jew, right? Your cleaning lady, tell her like, I'm giving you this. Do you mind if we keep it here and we still continue using it, and explain her the concept technically that it cannot belong to us, so you're giving it to her so we can use it without having to take to the mikveh or take apart an essential component of it. Or best case scenarios, you take it to the mikveh, you leave it, you dip it in once, you take it out, you let it dry for 24 or 48 hours, and then it's very, very rare that something should happen if you do that. Again, when we're saying take it to water, it's not ocean water, meaning not salt water, only fresh water. Salt water could definitely ruin electrical appliances. Okay.
Rabbi, what about glass or metal objects that are brought from Israel? Does it need to be taken?
Very good. So in general, just for you to know, most utensils that you're buying in Israel aren't made in Israel, right? Most of them are usually made in China. And even if they're made in Israel, you just have to, again, you'd have to like check more or less the factory where they are. It's a one-time verification. Check the factory where they are to see if it's run by Jews or if it's Jews that are working there or Arabs. I know in general, many of the things that come from Israel that are made by Jews, they have like a sticker on it, which says "En tzorich b'tvila." Says in Hebrew, does not need to be taken to the mikveh. And I'm assuming again because it's Jews that made it. In that case, it doesn't need to be taken to the mikveh.
What about silver stuff?
Sorry?
Silver.
Silver is
Silver,
metal.
no, because it's not in contact with food always. You know what I mean? Like, let's say with salt. You know what I mean? Like that shaker.
Sorry, we were talking about silverware, like forks and stuff like that.
Well,
we're talking about like a silver, like to put salt, let's say.
Salt shaker.
Okay, very good. So that comes into contact directly with food. Right? So things that come in contact directly with food, we need to take them to the mikveh. Now, when we say metal, silver is included in metal, right? Gold is included in metal as well. So all that would be needed to be taken to the mikveh.
Rabbi, I have a question. So you said stone. How about China? When you have a China dishes and all that stuff, that was the also of stone.
So very good. Those are something like sorry. What is bone china again? What is it made out of? It's usually pottery with like a glass covering. No.
It's glazed.
It is glazed. When it's
Glazed and baked.
Very good. So that brings us a little bit into what we were discussing before, where if it's a earthenware utensil that it has a glass coating on it, so then we need to take that to the mikveh. If it's, again, you have to just be careful that it's the top and the bottom, because many times on plates, what you'll have is only the top part of the plate is properly glazed, and the bottom part you can very often feel is still rough. So in that case, it would need a bracha with, it would need the mikveh without a bracha. But if it's on both sides, then it needs with a bracha.
It's something is made out of stone, like marble or
Stone doesn't need mikveh.
natural substance. Because it's not made, it's a natural substance, so it doesn't need to be removed. Because it's a stone, it's a natural product.
Sorry.
You don't want to put it in a mikveh because it's a stone, it's a natural.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not that it's natural. It's just that stone doesn't need the mikveh. When the whole concept of the mikveh came about because when the Jews did the war in Midian, right before the Jewish people went into Eretz Israel, so they had a war, and as part of that war, right after they come back from that war, Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people, "Ach et hazahav, et habedil ve'et haofaret." So, "Ach et hazahav," okay, et hakesef, et hanechoshet, et habarzel, ve'et habedil ve'et haofaret. So all those things needed to be kosher, meaning that's where we get the concept of koshering utensils from the Torah. And the Torah mentioned very clearly zahav, gold, silver, nechoshet is copper, barzel is iron, bedil and bedila, I don't know exactly what that is, and ofaret is lead. So things made out of those are those utensils were basically obligated by the Torah to take, and then they added on also. They added in also afterwards, the chuchit is glass, okay? Because glass is also very similar like it, that even if it breaks, you're still able to melt it down and remake whatever it is, as opposed to pottery, right? Pottery, once you break a pottery, something of pottery, it's impossible to fix. The same thing would apply, I guess, also to a stone or a wood utensil, right? You break one of those things, it's impossible to fix them back afterwards. Now, plastic, right? Plastic is something that didn't exist back in the days of Chachamim. So since that didn't exist, Chachamim never said that we never have to take there was never a decree that we had to take plastic to the mikveh, right? So even though we have plastic nowadays, we say, like, why should we just make something forbidden if Chachamim never made it forbidden? Okay, so those are the things that we generally need to take to the mikveh. Otherwise, most of the other things they don't like. Again, we went through the different examples of what is allowed, what isn't allowed. Okay.
Thank you so much.
With pleasure. Okay, so I think we'll stop here for today, Be'ezrat Hashem, and Be'ezrat Hashem will continue next week.
Thank you.
B'simcha. Bye-bye.